Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you'd sign anything they put in front of you? Trusted them so completely, you didn't even read the fine print, only to wake up one day and find yourself the criminal on the evening news? Fiona Hart was a woman who once had everything: love, family, an empire, a name that shone, until the man she trusted most destroyed it all. And her best friend slipped into her life like a wedding gown glittering under the camera lights. 5 years behind bars, Fiona lost everything: her children, her reputation, her freedom. But what Nathan Jones and Joan Clark didn't know was that they had just created something the world had never seen before. A woman who had died in the fire and learned how to rise from the ashes. This isn't a revenge story. This is a story about rebirth. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, been betrayed, or had to rebuild your life from the ruins, this story is for you. Hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'm here. I've been broken, but I'm still alive. Because from then on, you and I are walking through the fire together. See how brightly a woman can burn when she rises from the ashes. There's something special about exam season in Seattle. The whole city seems to run on caffeine. Every cafe around campus buzzes with the sound of keyboards, the rustle of papers, tired sighs, and the soft hiss of steam rising from hot lattes. Fiona Hart was one of those faces in the crowd, brown hair tied up hastily, dark circles under her eyes after 2 sleepless nights, surrounded by a forest of textbooks in the Harbor State University library. 3 empty energy drink cans lay scattered beside her, and her old laptop ran an enormous set of notes for her business management final. She kept studying, repeating, "Just get through this semester, just a little more, and everything will change." When she stood up to grab some coffee, the world tilted slightly. Lack of sleep and low blood sugar blurred her vision. Fiona grabbed her caramel latte, her 3rd caffeine hit of the day, and hurried down the stairs. That's when she tripped over a backpack lying across the aisle. Time slowed. The cup flew from her hand, spun mid-air, and landed perfectly on someone's open, glowing laptop. Coffee spread like a wound across the metal surface. Fiona froze. "Oh my God," she gasped, rushing forward, snatching napkins, and trying to stop the panic inside her. "I'm so sorry. I'll pay for it. The guy looked up, and in the middle of the chaos, the first thing Fiona noticed was he was laughing. Not the awkward kind of laugh people use to diffuse tension, but a real one, warm, easy, and bright. "Well," he said, voice deep and rough with fatigue, "at least now I've got a reason to take a break." That voice, tired yet playful, caught her off guard. His dark brown eyes glimmered with mischief, and Fiona suddenly forgot what she was about to say. "No, you don't understand. I actually ruined your computer." He chuckled, taking a few napkins from her hand. "Relax. It deserved a break. I've been torturing it for 6 hours with those damn equations." She was speechless as he leaned down to wipe the table. Under the library's soft yellow light, steam still rose from the spill, and droplets of coffee clung to his black hair. "What's your major?" she asked. "Software engineering, systems focus," he replied, glancing up at her. "You?" "Judging by that pile of papers, I'd say business." "Right. Business management. And I just bankrupted your coffee fund." He laughed. "Tell you what, buy me another cup, and I'll forgive everything." "That's not enough. That laptop must be worth $1,000. "Nope. I'll take the coffee." "Seriously?" "Seriously. I don't believe in punishment. I believe in fate. Maybe the universe just wanted us to meet, a little messily." The words made her pause. Fate, the universe. They sounded romantic and unrealistic. But in that moment, she believed him. "Deal," she said. They walked out of the library together, crossing a rain-soaked street covered in maple leaves. The 24-hour cafe on Beacon Corner still glowed, neon lights reflecting off puddles. Inside, the smell of espresso and the hum of soft jazz made the world outside fade away. They sat in a corner booth, 2 fresh cups of coffee between them. "So, Fiona Hart," he said, calm and curious, "what's your biggest life plan?" "I don't want just to live to pay bills. I want to build something real, something that matters." "Then we're the same," he smiled. "I'm Nathan Jones." They talked until sunrise about dreams, childhood, little failures, and big hopes. About why they believed technology could bring people closer, not pull them apart. When the first light filtered through the cafe windows, Fiona blinked in surprise. "Oh my God, we've been talking for 7 hours." Nathan looked outside, voice low and warm. "And they were the best 7 hours I've ever had." They laughed, and in that laughter, something unspoken began to form. Before they said goodbye, Nathan turned to her. "When I build something that changes the world, would you want to be part of it?" Fiona raised an eyebrow. "And if I say I believe you, then I'll prove to you that a spilled coffee can change a life." She laughed. "You're more romantic than I thought, engineer. Just wait and see." He walked away, leaving Fiona standing in the soft morning light, holding her warm cup of coffee, and for the first time in her life, she felt the universe was smiling back at her. 3 years later, Seattle still reigned, but Fiona's life was nothing like before. From nothing, she and Nathan had built Hart and Joan's Innovations. What started as a vague idea, a platform to help small businesses connect resources, had become an app with millions of users. Their tiny apartment had become an office cluttered with cables, sticky notes, and the smell of cold pizza. Fiona handled operations, funding, and contracts. Nathan took care of the code, product, and endless nights of debugging. They worked, loved, and believed nothing could break their bond. One evening, after sending off a vital investment proposal, Fiona stepped onto the balcony. Below, Seattle's lights shimmered on the Duwamish River like stars. Nathan joined her, holding a small box. "Remember the first time we met? The spilled coffee, the dead laptop, and that fateful latte? How could I forget?" He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring with a tiny emerald. "I designed it myself. You know I'm not great at art, but..." Fiona laughed through her tears. "Are you proposing to me?" "Yes. Nothing grand. Just a promise I'll build a whole world around you." She nodded, crying, and hugged him tight. It was the first time Fiona truly believed she could hold happiness in her own hands. They married 6 months later, in Nathan's mother's garden in Oregon. Just 20 guests, no luxury, no show, only candlelight, wine, and the wind whispering through the pines. Fiona wore a rented white dress, Nathan, his only suit. When they read their vows, he took her hands. "We'll build everything from nothing, and if we fall together." For the next 3 years, they did precisely that. The startup thrived. Magazines began calling them the couple who built a dream. Fiona gave birth to Pascal, a boy born in autumn, and later Ruby, their radiant little girl. Late nights were filled with the sound of typing, the scent of coffee, and the soft cries of a baby in the background. One night, Nathan asked, "Do you ever regret it?" "Spilling coffee on my laptop?" Fiona smiled, taking his hand. "If I could go back, I'd spill it again." He laughed and kissed her forehead. Then, "Forever, okay? Forever." Light from their apartment window glowed on their faces, 2 people young enough to believe love could conquer the world, to believe everything they built was unbreakable. But what Fiona didn't know was that every promise carries, hidden within it, the seed of betrayal. Early spring in Seattle had a rare softness. The rain that had lingered through March finally eased, and Lake Union lay still, reflecting a sky so clear it felt almost new. Fiona sat by the window of her small office at Hart and Joan's Innovations, sipping her morning coffee. Outside, young employees typed furiously, the rhythm of keyboards blending into a gentle lo-fi tune. 3 years after the wedding, she and Nathan were now the golden couple of the startup world, their own office, 2 beautiful kids, a company expanding into California. Life was busy, but in her heart, Fiona felt at peace. At least, until that morning. The door opened, and Lydia, her young assistant, peeked in. "Miss Fiona, there's someone here to see you." She said she's an old friend. Fiona looked up, and when the door swung open, she froze. Joan Clark, her best friend from high school. The girl she'd shared sketchbooks, indie music, and late-night dreams with. The one she'd promised, no matter where life takes us, we won't forget each other. Joan looked almost the same, softly curled blonde hair, tall frame, a sleek black blazer, but something in her eyes made Fiona's spine prickle, not from coldness, but from something burning quietly beneath the surface. "Fiona Hart," Joan said with a lingering smile. "My God, you haven't changed at all." Fiona stood, beaming. "Joan, oh my God, how long has it been?" "Over 4 years. You're a full-blown businesswoman, and I'm still juggling dull PR contracts." Nathan stepped out from his office next door, sleeves rolled up, coffee in hand. "Hey, we have company?" Fiona smiled. "Nathan, this is Joan, my best friend from high school. Joan, this is my husband." Joan extended her hand, her smile lighting up the room. "So lovely to finally meet you, Nathan. I've heard so much about you and your company. You two really are the power couple of this world." Nathan shook her hand, polite as always. "Thank you. Fiona's the best part of this place." Joan tilted her head, eyes flicking briefly toward Fiona. "Of course she is." It lasted less than a second, that look, but it sent a chill down Fiona's spine. She couldn't explain why. Maybe just intuition. At lunch, they caught up. Joan shared that she'd just left a big agency and was looking for new opportunities in brand consulting. Nathan listened intently, and Fiona was thrilled. Joan could help their company grow. "We're about to launch a new product campaign," Fiona said. "If you're interested, come work with us." Joan's smile brightened. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I trust you." Joan's hand brushed hers light as a petal. "Thank you, Fi. Not everyone trusts people as easily as you do." It sounded like a compliment, yet something about it stung faintly in Fiona's chest. That afternoon, as Fiona left early to pick up the kids, she glanced through the glass wall. Joan and Nathan were talking at his desk. Both were laughing. Joan leaned in slightly, touching his shoulder as she handed him a file, a small gesture but far too familiar. Fiona stood still for just a moment, then shook her head. "Don't be paranoid. Fiona, Joan's your friend, Nathan's your husband." She walked away, unaware that this was the first day her happiness began to crack a tiny fracture invisible to the eye, but one that would spread until everything fell apart. A month later, Joan became indispensable to the company. Nathan praised her for being sharp and intuitive, a fresh voice for the brand. Fiona was glad, at least, at first. It felt good to have someone who understood her, someone to share the weight. Joan began appearing everywhere, in meetings, late-night strategy sessions, and even at their dinner table. She often came early to help Fiona cook or play with Pascal and Ruby. The kids adored her, calling her Aunt Joan. Nathan seemed comfortable with her around. When Fiona was too busy, Joan helped finish her presentations, polish her slides, and set up the meeting rooms. Everything looked perfectly normal, too perfect. And that's why Fiona didn't see that she was slowly being replaced. One late evening, Fiona and Joan sat on the porch, glasses of red wine in hand. Nathan had called to say he'd be home late from a meeting. Joan tilted her head, voice soft as a breeze. "You really trust him, don't you?" "Of course. Why do you ask?" "Oh, no reason. If it were me, I'd read every contract before signing it, even from people I love." Fiona laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Nathan would never lie to me. We're a team." Joan gazed into the distance, eyes distant. "You know, sometimes people don't lie out of malice. They think they're protecting you." The words lingered, heavy and strange. But Fiona brushed them off. "Joan's just being cautious. That's what friends do." Time passed, and those words took root like seeds. Fiona began noticing little things. Nathan brought less work home but traveled more. He chuckled on the phone and sometimes turned the screen away when she walked by. When she asked, he said, "It's just clients." She believed him because trust was the foundation of everything. One afternoon, Lydia whispered, "Miss Fiona, Miss Joan asked me to print the updated financial reports for you to sign, but didn't you already sign them last week?" Fiona frowned. "Really?" She said Nathan wanted to update a few details. "They look identical to the old ones." Fiona smiled faintly. "Probably just a formality." She signed, as always, never realizing each signature was another thread tightening around her. Joan was already there when Fiona got home that night, playing with Ruby in the living room. Nathan stood by the kitchen door, light glinting off his face. They looked at each other and smiled. Fiona couldn't hear what they said, but she saw how Joan looked at him, the look a woman only gives a man she secretly wants. Fiona forced a smile. "Joan, are you staying in Seattle long?" Joan looked up, her grin bright and easy. "Maybe. There's so much opportunity here. And besides, I'm not ready to leave my good friends yet." Fiona smiled back, but her heart grew heavy, as if somewhere else was quietly cutting through the red thread of her fate. That night, while Nathan slept, Fiona stood on the balcony, watching rain fall over the rooftops. She touched the emerald ring, her symbol of forever. It shimmered in the lamplight, beautiful but fragile. She whispered to herself, maybe forever isn't real. Maybe it's just the word people use to paint over what's already breaking. The rain kept falling, soft and endless, and beneath its sound, Fiona didn't yet know starting tomorrow, Joan would begin cutting through her trust, one tender word, one gentle smile at a time. August in Seattle always carried a particular kind of light golden, soft, and quietly sad, as if summer were packing its bags to leave. Fiona sat in her office, surrounded by stacks of documents that had become her daily landscape. The company grew faster than she had imagined. New investors, federal contracts, and expansion plans to New York. Every day felt like being caught in a storm she herself had summoned. Nathan was always busy now. He no longer worked beside her like before. Instead, he stayed upstairs in his new executive office, where Joan always seemed to be, carrying files and a perfect smile. Fiona tried not to think about it. We're scaling up, she told herself. He needs help. Joan's good at what she does. It's fine. One morning, Nathan walked into her office. Eyes tired, but determined. He set down a thick stack of papers. Can you sign these for me? Partnership agreements, just formality stuff. They need both co-founders' signatures. Fiona looked up, smiling playfully. You don't trust that I'll read every line, huh? He chuckled. I know you trust me, and I know you're swamped. She sighed. You're right. I haven't even had time to breathe this week. Nathan sat beside her and took her hand gently. We're so close, Fi. Once this happens, I can buy out the minor shareholders and fully control operations. You can focus on the product and PR. She looked at him. There was that confidence in his eyes again, the kind that made her believe everything was under control. You always know what you're doing, and I always do it for us. Fiona picked up the pen and began signing. The soft scratch of ink filled the quiet room. Neither of them said a word. Neither noticed that each signature drew her one step closer to the edge of ruin. When she was done, Nathan kissed her forehead and whispered, You're the soul of me. It was tender, intoxicating, and yet, those exact words would send a shiver down her spine in years to come. That afternoon, Joan stopped by her desk, voice calm as ever. You signed the new contracts already? Yes. Nathan gave them to me this morning. Good girl. Joan smiled, her eyes glinting. He really trusts you, you know. Yeah, Fiona said softly. And I trust him. Joan tilted her head, her smile barely shifting. Sometimes, trust is just the fastest way to lose everything. Fiona laughed it off. A joke, she told herself. But when Joan walked away, something inside her twisted. That night, Nathan was already asleep when she got home. She showered, dried her hair, sat by the bed, and had her laptop open to review the contracts, but exhaustion won. She closed it halfway. On the bedside table lay the pregnancy test from that morning, 2 bright pink lines. Her hand moved to her stomach. A new heartbeat, a new beginning. Her pulse raced, their third child, a gift in the middle of chaos. She looked at Nathan, the dim light brushing over his face. Everything's going to be fine, she whispered. We've survived worse. We'll be okay. Outside, the sky over Seattle turned to ash. The first autumn rain began to fall. That afternoon started like any other. Fiona worked, drank coffee, and fine-tuned her presentation. Nathan texted, Come home early tonight. I've got good news. She smiled, tucking the ultrasound photo into her pocket. Good, because I've got good news too. At 4:30 p.m., the door burst open as she began to pack up. Heavy footsteps echoed across the floor, followed by a voice that cut through the hum of keyboards. FBI. Nobody move. The room froze. 3 employees stood petrified. A team in black jackets entered, badges flashing. One of them stepped toward Fiona. Fiona Hart. You are under arrest for suspected financial fraud, money laundering, and forgery. Fiona blinked, uncomprehending. Fraud? No. There must be some mistake. Cold metal clamped around her wrists. The sound of typing, shouting, and papers scattering filled the air. Lydia ran forward, panicked. She can't be, she's the founder. No one listened. Fiona looked around wildly. Nathan will come. He'll explain. He'll tell them this is wrong. Call my husband, Nathan Jones. He'll clear this up. The agent glanced at his file. We've already spoken with Mr. Jones. He provided all relevant documents and confirmed the signatures. He said he did not know about the transactions. Fiona's heart stopped. What? Did you just say? The door at the end of the hallway opened, and there he was. Nathan. Black suit. expression unreadable. Joan beside him, her gaze calm, almost serene. Fiona's voice shook. "Nathan, tell them. Tell them you know I didn't do this." He didn't move. Didn't even meet her eyes. "I can't help you, Fiona." The words fell like stones, the last ones needed to collapse her world. "You can't be serious. Nathan, you know everything. You told me to sign." Two agents held her back as she screamed. The cuffs dug deeper into her skin. Joan stepped forward, her tone smooth, almost pitying. "You should stop talking, Fiona. You'll only make it worse." Fiona looked at her, tears streaming, voice trembling but clear. "It was you. You did this." Joan's lips curved faintly. Her eyes shimmered with something that looked like false sympathy. "Fee, sometimes people destroy themselves without realizing it." She turned away. Nathan didn't. Fiona was dragged down the long hallway, footsteps echoing on the cold tile floor. Outside, rain poured down, drowning Seattle in grey. Lydia chased after them, crying out, "Miss Fiona, I'll fix this. I'll prove it." Fiona could barely hear. Everything blurred: voices, faces, the world itself. All she felt was cold. Her wrists burned. Rain splattered through the car window as they shoved her inside. She saw Nathan standing in the rain through the glass, phone in hand. He didn't run after her, didn't say a word. Only Joan stepped closer, resting her hand gently on his shoulder. The streetlights glow over them, two silhouettes under a city of storm. And in that moment, Fiona finally understood. Some loves don't end with goodbye. They end with a warrant. She pressed her hand against her stomach, where life still stirred. "Baby," her voice cracked, barely a whisper. "Don't be afraid. I'm going to live. I have to." The car sped off through the rain, leaving behind a blur of lights, the shattered reflection of a dream now drowned in grey. The Redwood Correctional Facility on the outskirts of Seattle wasn't like any place Fiona had ever known. Everything there was heavy: the air, the light, the footsteps, even time itself. Time didn't pass. It crawled slow, cold, and merciless. Fiona still couldn't believe it was real 3 days after her arrest. Her holding cell was narrow, lit by a flickering fluorescent lamp that erased all sense of day or night. Scratches covered the walls, faint scars left by 1,000 forgotten screams. She kept waiting for Nathan. Every time the door creaked open, she looked up, but it was never him. Instead, a grey-haired man in a worn suit appeared one afternoon, holding a stack of papers. "The prosecutor's offering 20 years, he said flatly. "But if you plead guilty, I can try to get it down to 8 parole in 5. Fiona stared at him. "But I'm innocent." "Mrs. Jones, every piece of evidence points to you: signatures, accounts, transactions, even your husband's statement. There's no way out." "He's lying." "Nathan set me up." The lawyer sighed, closing his briefcase. "You have children, don't you? You should sign this to see them again before they're grown." The paper in front of her trembled under the hum of the air vent. At the top, in bold print, "Statement of guilt." If she signed, she would confess to crimes she hadn't committed. If she refused, she might spend the rest of her life behind bars. Her hand shook as she picked up the pen, not because she believed she was guilty, but because she finally understood that truth didn't always win against power. The day of her sentencing, rain lashed the city. Headlines screamed, "The woman who lost her tech empire to greed." On TV, Nathan appeared in a black suit, face somber. "I believe in justice," he said softly. "I only hope Fiona finds peace within herself." Fiona threw her plastic meal tray against the wall when she heard it. It shattered, and in that sharp sound, she realized, people don't need to kill you with knives. They need to make the world believe you deserve to die. 2 weeks later, she was transferred to Redwood Women's Correctional Facility, where she would pay for the crime she hadn't committed. The cell was 6 by 8 feet, metal bed, thin blanket. Her cellmate, a large woman with a snake tattoo curling up her neck, smirked. "Heard you used to be a millionaire?" Fiona didn't answer. When everyone else slept at night, she lay still, staring at the ceiling. Every sound was foreign: the clank of locks, someone crying, the hum of metal doors. She thought of Pascal, Ruby, and the tiny heartbeat inside her. Her hand rested on her belly. "Baby," she whispered, "I'm here. Even if the world forgets me, I won't forget you." Time dragged on, cruel and slow. In her first month, she could barely keep food down. No one believed she was pregnant until the routine medical check confirmed it. "You're about 7 weeks along," the nurse said, voice detached. "You should have reported this earlier." No one asked. The nurse shrugged. "I'll note it in your file." From then on, Fiona was given a daily multivitamin, the only thing that reminded her she belonged to the living world. The food was dry rice and cold soup, but she ate. For the life inside her, she had to. One day in the cafeteria, a tall black inmate with a gentle smile sat beside her. "Heard you're the billionaire lady your husband sold out," she said. Fiona stayed quiet. The woman chuckled. "Don't worry. Everyone here's been sold out by someone. You're just the only one who made the news." Her name was May, and she became Fiona's first friend behind bars. They washed clothes together, shared sugar packets, and talked about the world outside. "Do you think he regrets it?" May asked one night. Fiona was silent for a long time before answering softly, "No. People don't regret what they've convinced themselves was right." As months passed, her belly grew. She was moved from laundry duty to the paper-folding workshop. Every night, she dreamed of Pascal's laughter, Nathan turning away, Joan wearing the emerald ring that used to be hers, its green light cutting through the dark like a blade. In the 8th month, the pain came in the middle of the night. She pounded on the door, shouting, "I'm in labor, please." It took 15 minutes for the guards to respond. Fluorescent light, a steel bed, the smell of disinfectant. No one held her hand. Only the nurse's voice echoed, cold and clinical. "Push." Again. Harder. And then, a cry. A single, piercing cry, slicing through the sterile air. "A girl," the nurse murmured, placing the tiny body on Fiona's chest. Fiona looked down. A small face, closed eyes, warm skin. She burst into tears. "Hello, sweetheart," she whispered. "Bella, you're my miracle." She had 24 hours with her. The next day, the door opened. A man in a grey suit stepped in. "The father has come to take the child." Fiona clutched Bella tighter. "No, I need to talk to him." He declined to meet. "Please, just 1 minute." "Sorry, ma'am." The female guard stepped forward, gentle but firm, and lifted Bella from her arms. The baby screamed, the sound echoing down the cement hallway. Fiona's voice broke into a raw scream. "Give her back. Nathan, you can't do this. Nathan." No one answered. The door shut. The crying faded, and then silence. Fiona collapsed onto the cold floor when the footsteps disappeared, clutching the empty blanket. That was the first time she truly died, not in body, but in soul. 3 days later, she was returned to her cell. Her breasts ached with milk, but there was no baby to feed. Whenever the pain grew, she closed her eyes and imagined Bella still in her arms. One evening, May slipped her a folded piece of paper. "Write your baby's name down," she said. "I'll keep it safe. People here forget they ever had someone waiting for them." Fiona's hand trembled as she wrote, "Bella Jones, 7 libras 3 onza, Tuesday morning." She folded it and tucked it into her shirt. It was the only thing she could keep. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the wind howled through the vents, and someone cried in the next block. Fiona whispered, her voice rough and steady, "Nathan, Joan, you took everything from me, but you forgot one thing." She opened her eyes. In the dark, they burned with new light. "I'm still alive." That was the first night she didn't cry. It was the night she started to plan. 3 years. 3 Christmases had passed since Fiona first stepped into Redwood. Time here wasn't measured in days or months. It was measured by how many times a person learned not to cry when the lights went out. Life had become routine. Wake to the siren, eat a cold breakfast, fold paper in the workshop, return to the cell. She barely spoke to anyone but May. Every day looked exactly like the one before until that morning. The metal door creaked open. A female guard called out, "Hart, you've got a visitor." Fiona looked up. "I don't have family." "You do now." A Lydia Moore. The name hit her like a pulse of light. Lydia, her old assistant from Hart and Jones, the one who'd tried to stop the FBI when they took her away. When Fiona entered the visitation room, her heartbeat quickened. The space was small, with white walls and thick glass separating the prisoners from the outside world. On the other side sat Lydia, still the same brown-haired girl, only thinner, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. When she saw Fiona, she stood abruptly, tears spilling. "Miss Fiona." Fiona managed a faint smile, the kind you learn after 3 years of practicing how not to break. You still remember me? I never forgot. I knew you didn't do it. Fiona's fingers tightened around the phone. What did you say? I found things. Receipts, deleted emails, and signatures. They don't match yours. Fiona went silent. For 3 years, she'd wondered if anyone still believed her. And now someone was saying, I do. What are you going to do? I've given everything to a lawyer. His name's Lance Davis. He said he'll review your case. Fiona laughed a sound with no joy, only bitterness. You know, Lydia, in here they say, justice is the rarest word in the dictionary, but I still believe it exists. And so does he. Something in Fiona's chest stirred something that had been buried under years of numbness. Hope. Before leaving, Lydia pressed her hand against the glass. I promise, I won't stop until you're free. When Fiona returned to her cell, May teased, heard someone came to see you. Boyfriend? Fiona smiled softly. No, someone who believes me, and that's rarer than love. That night, for the first time in years, she took out the stub of a pencil hidden in her shirt hem and began to write again. Someone believes I'm innocent. Her name is Lydia. I don't know if hope is dangerous, but I'll keep it even if it's my last breath. 2 months later, the guards called her to the warden's office. She thought it was a random inspection, but when the door opened, a man stood there, shirt wrinkled, tie crooked, papers spilling from his bag. He smiled, awkward but warm. Fiona Hart? Yes. And you are? Lance Davis, attorney. Lydia sent me. His voice was gentle, a little rough from fatigue, but his eyes were startlingly sincere. He showed his ID, then sat down. To be honest, I don't usually take criminal cases, but I read your file and it's wrong. Wrong? No one signs 37 transactions in 2 minutes, and no one does it from 2 IP addresses in different states. Fiona stared at him. So you think I was framed? I don't think I know you were. She hesitated. Why are you helping me? He smiled faintly, because I know what it's like to be destroyed by lies. My wife left 3 years ago, took our daughter, said I was the villain of her story. I want to believe that not everyone the world condemns is guilty. They looked at each other, no pity, just quiet understanding. Over the following weeks, Lance came often. They spoke through the glass, going over every detail, every transaction, every name. He was clumsy, spilled coffee, lost pens, forgot notes, but he always brought her something small. A cup of real coffee. Here. Had to bribe a guard for this. Fiona chuckled. You're reckless. Worth it. They say coffee reminds people they're still free. She took a sip. It was hot, bitter, but the bitterness of the outside world. Do you really believe me, Lance? I do. You haven't known me long enough to believe that. He met her eyes. Belief doesn't need time. It just needs a reason. And you're mine. For the first time in years, Fiona had no words. A few weeks later, Lance brought news. Lydia found a trail money wired to a shell company with the initials JC. Fiona's hand trembled. Joan Clark. There's more. A recording file automatically saved from the old internal system. We're trying to recover it. Fiona's eyes filled with tears. Lance, for 3 years I asked myself if someone finally believed me. Would I still have the strength to believe in myself? He smiled softly. And now? Now I do, because of you. They sat in silence, the glass between them, unable to mute what passed through their eyes. Not love yet, but something more profound. Trust. A fragile thread strong enough to pull a soul back from the edge. Before leaving, Lance said quietly, I can't promise we'll win, but I promise I won't give up. Fiona smiled. I once had someone promise me forever, and he betrayed me. Now, I need someone who promises not to walk away. He nodded. Then that's the promise I'll keep. That afternoon, as Lance walked out of the gates, Fiona stood behind the bars watching him go. Sunlight filtered through the metal, casting lines of gold across her face. For the first time in a very long time, she felt warm. Not all angels have wings, she whispered. Some just carry old briefcases, cold coffee, and a promise they actually mean. The 4th winter of Fiona's imprisonment was colder than all the rest. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, a chorus of lost souls who'd never found peace. But beneath that endless noise, Fiona began to hear something else, the faint footsteps of hope. For 3 weeks, Lance hadn't visited. Fiona worried he'd given up, that maybe even the kindest hearts had limits. Then, on the 22nd morning, the cell door opened and the guard called, "Hart, your lawyer's here." Fiona stepped out, her heart pounding. When the visitation door opened, she saw Lance's hair disheveled, eyes shadowed from sleepless nights, clutching a small hard drive. Beside him stood Lydia, wrapped in a thick coat, lips pale from the cold. "We found it," Lydia said, trembling, half laugh, half tears. "Found what?" Lance placed the drive on the table. "The original recording from your company's server, hidden deep in a backup system. I had someone recover it." He plugged it into his laptop. The faint hum of the machine filled the silence. Then a voice played low, calm, and devastatingly familiar. "Nathan. She trusts me blindly. All we need is her signature. She's the only name on the papers when it blows up." Then Joan's voice, sharp, deliberate. "I'll make sure every transfer routes through her accounts." "Nathan, are you sure? She's the mother of your children." "Not anymore," Nathan replied coldly. "She's the only mistake I ever made." A short, cruel laugh, and the recording ended. Fiona sat frozen. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The world blurred, sound vanished. Only the pounding of her own heart remained. Lance's voice broke through the silence. "This is enough to reopen your case, but it'll take time. I'll file for retrial with the federal court." Fiona nodded slowly. "Do it. I can wait. I'm not afraid anymore." As they left, Lydia pressed her hand against the glass. "You'll be free, Fiona. I promise." Fiona smiled, the first genuine smile in years that didn't taste bitter. "No, Lydia," she said softly. "We'll be free." 2 weeks later, Fiona was summoned to the warden's office. A female officer read from a letter. "Your retrial has been approved. You'll be transferred to the district court next week." Fiona couldn't speak. She just bowed her head, tears falling onto her hands. May, her old cellmate, grinned through wet eyes. "Go, Fee. Get out there. Live for all of us who can't." Fiona hugged her tightly. "Thank you," was all she could manage. That night, sleep never came. She sat by the bars, watching the snow drift down soft, silent. Each flake felt like a memory dissolving, melting into the earth. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "the truth will finally breathe." The morning of the hearing, Seattle's sky hung low and heavy with clouds. Fiona walked into the courtroom in grey prison clothes, her hair cropped short, her face stripped of softness, but her eyes burned bright. The light of someone who had walked through hell still carried her soul intact. The courtroom was packed. Reporters crowded the aisles, ready to cover the tech empire Betrayal. Nathan wasn't there. Neither was Joan. Lance entered, clutching his briefcase, expression calm but fierce. He laid out the evidence, the recovered recording, the bank statements, the forged signatures, and a statement from a former engineer who'd witnessed everything. His voice was steady, deliberate. "Your Honor, my client is not a criminal. She was betrayed, exploited, and framed by the very man she loved and trusted." The prosecutor tried to push back, but the truth was undeniable. No one made a sound when the recording played through the courtroom speakers. Nathan's voice echoed like a blade. "She's the only mistake I ever made." Fiona sat still, hands clasped, eyes fixed forward. She didn't cry. Under the blinding white lights, she looked almost serene, like someone who'd finally stopped running from the past. After hours of deliberation, the judge raised the gavel. "Based on new evidence, this court hereby overturns the conviction of Fiona Hart. The defendant is to be released immediately." The sound of the gavel struck like thunder. Fiona barely heard it. Her ears rang, her pulse roared. Lance turned to her, smiling through exhaustion. "You're free, Fiona." She nodded slowly, tears spilling down her face, not from sorrow, but from the shock of finally being able to breathe as a human being again. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled of rain. The sky was still grey, but for once, it didn't feel suffocating. Lance handed her a cup of steaming coffee, real coffee. No more instant prison mix. Fiona took it, inhaling deeply. "I'd forgotten what this smells like. It's the scent of freedom." She smiled faintly. "It's bitter. The real things always are." They stood quietly, watching cars glide past on wet streets. To the world, she was just another woman holding a cup of coffee on a cold Seattle afternoon. No one knew she'd once been called a criminal. She spoke softly. "You know, I don't want revenge anymore. I want to live." Lance smiled. Then live. But if you ever change your mind, I'll still be here." She laughed, honestly laughed for the first time in 4 years. As they left the courthouse, the first snowflakes of winter began to fall. Fiona tilted her head back, letting them melt against her skin. "Is this what freedom smells like?" she asked. Lance smiled. "What does it smell like to you?" She looked up at the sky, her voice barely above a whisper. "It smells like wind and rain, like Seattle itself. It smells like me, when no one else gets to define who I am." The day Fiona walked free, Seattle greeted her with a kind of rain that only the city knew, thin, icy, and sharp, breaking apart mid-air like glass. She stood motionless before the gates of Redwood Prison, clutching her small bag of possessions, a few papers, a notebook, and the worn pencil she had kept through 4 long years. No one waited for her outside, no one except Lance Davis, the clumsy lawyer with the crooked tie and the steady eyes that had learned how to listen. He stepped forward, holding a thick coat and a steaming cup of coffee. "Welcome back to the world," he said. His voice was low, rough from the cold, but inside it was something Fiona thought she'd never hear again. Trust. She took the cup, the warmth soaking into her hands. Breathing in the steam, she smiled faintly. "The world looks the same as it did 4 years ago." Lance tilted his head, watching her. "No, it doesn't. The world's the same. You're the one who's changed." They didn't speak much on the drive back. The radio hummed softly an old Tracy Chapman song, wistful but clean, the kind that fills silence without asking questions. Fiona stared out the window. The trembling trees, the wet neon lights, the city that had moved on without her. The world hadn't missed her, and she felt like someone walking through the ashes of a dream. When the car stopped, she looked up at a small 2-story house, grey roof, low wooden fence, an old swing creaking in the yard. "My place," Lance said, a little shy. "Not fancy like the ones you used to live in, but it's safe." Fiona smiled. "Safety's the most expensive thing I ever lost." The front door opened, and a little girl, 6, maybe, ran out, brown hair flying, round glasses slipping down her nose. "Daddy, you're home." She froze when she saw Fiona, curiosity replacing surprise. "Who's that?" Lance started to answer, but Fiona knelt first, smiling gently. "I'm a friend of your dad's. I used to live somewhere without windows. Today, I finally got to see the sky again." The girl blinked, then reached out her hand. "I'm Helena." Fiona shook it softly and realized she had forgotten what it felt like to touch a hand that wasn't cuffed, trembling, or afraid. Dinner was simple spaghetti, burnt bread, and a little salad. Helena talked endlessly and laughed easily. Lance kept spilling water and apologizing, and Fiona laughed, really laughed, until she startled herself. 4 years since she'd last made a sound like that. That night, they sat in the living room under warm yellow light. Lance looked at her quietly. "What do you want to do now?" Fiona stared into her cold cup of tea, speaking slowly. "I want to get my daughter back, and I want the truth to have my name again." Lance nodded once. He didn't need to ask why. They understood each other without words. Outside, rain whispered against the glass, but for the first time, it didn't sound like a prison. It was just rain. Ordinary, human. And Fiona was learning how to live in that kind of world again. In the days that followed, she lived quietly. She didn't go out in daylight afraid of flashbulbs, cameras, and the whispers of people who had once called her a monster. When Lance and Helena were asleep at night, she sat in the small living room, laptop open, scrolling through old files and new headlines. Nathan and Joan were everywhere, glowing in photographs, smiling from magazine covers. "The Jones Empire rises from the shadows," one headline declared. Fiona chuckled softly. "Shadows? Whose shadows?" she murmured, closing the screen. She no longer cried. The tears had long dried. What remained was fire. Lance came in quietly and rested a hand on her shoulder. "They'll fall, Fiona. Just give it time." She looked up at him, eyes sharp as steel. "I don't want them to fall by chance. I want them to fall by my hand." He hesitated. "Be careful. Revenge can turn you into the thing you hate." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that cuts like a blade. "You're wrong. This isn't revenge. It's justice." Weeks later, she became someone else. Nora Mitchell. Short black hair, glasses, a name no one would question. She got a job as a data entry clerk at a small tech firm, boring, anonymous, perfect, enough to blend in, enough to watch. She parked her car a few hundred meters from Nathan's mansion at night, staring through binoculars. Pascal was 10 now, Ruby, 8, and Bella, her Bella, is 2 years old. Her children, her heart, and every night they called another woman Mom. Pascal didn't smile as much. Ruby had grown too fast, and Bella had her eyes. Bright, unbreakable. Fiona watched them, silent. There are pains that no longer make you cry, they make you sit very still, looking at what was once yours. One evening, Lance found her sitting in the car, headlights off, hands trembling slightly. He didn't scold her. He sat down beside her, facing the same house. They said nothing. Children's laughter drifted through the rain. After a while, Fiona whispered, "Do you know what it's like to hear your child laugh and not be allowed to walk toward them?" Lance's voice was quiet. "Yes, I do." She turned to him, surprised. "You lost your child too?" "Not lost," he said. "Just lost the chance to be there. When my wife left, Helena was 3. Fiona didn't answer, but something softened between them, two souls robbed of family by the people they once trusted completely. The following spring, Lydia brought news. Nathan's hosting a global expansion gala next month. Fiona was silent for a few seconds, then smiled a slow, calm, dangerous smile. "Perfect." Lance looked uneasy. "What are you planning?" Her voice was quiet but cold as steel. "To end it. All of it. Where everyone can see." He exhaled, shaking his head. "You know what that means, don't you?" "Yes." She looked out the window. Evening light carving shadows across her face, a face hardened by 4 years of steel and silence. "Nathan thought he killed me by locking me away," she said softly. "But he forgot something. When someone's already died once, they stop being afraid." She turned to him, her eyes lit by a calm, unyielding flame. "When they take everything from you, Lance, they don't destroy you. They create someone who has nothing left to lose. And people like that," she paused, almost smiling, "are the most dangerous of all." Outside, the sky over Seattle cleared. The clouds drifted, and light poured through the trees. And in the eyes of the woman who had walked through fire and come back breathing, a flame reignited, not of hatred, but of a soul who finally understood this. To reclaim true freedom, sometimes you must burn down what you once called sacred. Late December in Seattle, the kind of cold that turned every breath into smoke. The city shimmered under gold Christmas lights, carols spilling from every corner. But inside the grand ballroom of Mariner Hall, where the Global Link Gala was in full swing, the air was warmer, radiant with victory. Nathan Jones stood before a tall mirror, adjusting his tie and admiring the reflection of a man who had conquered everything. Beyond the glass wall, the city glittered. Inside, his pride burned brighter than any skyline. Joan entered, black dress hugging her frame, an emerald pendant gleaming at her throat. Fiona's emerald. "Nervous?" she teased, voice laced with a knowing smile. "Never," Nathan said coolly. "Winners don't get nervous." They descended into the ballroom. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters jostled for a glimpse. Champagne glasses clinked. The piano played softly and richly as people toasted the golden couple of tech. On the stage, the logo of Hart and Jones Innovations glowed across a massive screen. Only one name remained in bold letters: Jones Global Inc. Hart had been erased, as if Fiona Hart had never existed. In a shadowed corner near the catering line stood a woman in a long coat, dark hair, glasses unremarkable, invisible. No one knew her name was Nora Mitchell. No one knew she was Fiona. In her hand, a tablet glowed faintly. On her finger, the broken emerald ring was soldered back together with a thin line of silver. Fiona brushed her thumb over it. "This time," she whispered, "you're going home." Across the room, Lance watched her under the dim light. He knew what she was about to do and didn't stop her. He understood that in some battles, you had to fight alone. He nodded a silent blessing. The lights dimmed. Nathan walked onto the stage. His voice filled the hall, smooth, deep, practiced. "We turned a small company into a global empire in 4 years. And tonight, I'm proud to unveil our greatest step forward, a project that will change the world." Applause thundered. Fiona tapped her screen. Upload completed. Behind Nathan, the logo flickered, distorted, then vanished. A low hum, static, and suddenly, the speakers filled with a familiar voice. Nathan's. "She trusts me completely. We need her signature." She'll be the only name on the documents when it blows up. The room froze. Joan's head whipped around. Nathan's face drained of color under the stage lights. Then came her voice, cold, surgical. I'll make sure every transfer runs through her account. Nathan, are you sure? She's the mother of your children. Not anymore, he said. She's the only mistake I ever made. The audience gasped. Cameras flashed wildly. Someone shouted, "Turn it off!" But the system was locked. The screens flooded with documents, court files, forged signatures, matching reports. Every lie, every betrayal projected for the world to see. From across the room, Lance's hand tightened around his glass. He knew this moment. Fiona wasn't just revealing the truth, she was burning her past to the ground. Then, a single spotlight shifted toward the back exit. A figure stepped through it. Fiona, no glasses, no coat. Just a woman reborn, short black hair, pale face, and eyes burning bright as iron. The room fell silent. Nathan's breath caught. No, it's impossible. Fiona walked toward the stage, each step slow, steady, the walk of someone who had waited a lifetime to wake from a nightmare. When she reached him, she stopped just a few feet away. "Hello, Nathan," she said softly. "It's been a while." He swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. You're not allowed here. You're under restraint." "Orders?" Fiona cut in, voice low but clear. "You mean the orders built on your lies?" The crowd held its breath. The cameras rolled. The world was watching. Fiona took another step forward. "You once said you'd build a world around me. And you did, you built it on my grave. But you forgot something, Nathan. Sometimes, the dead come back." She turned to the audience. "I'm Fiona Hart, the woman they called a criminal, the one who went to prison for trusting the wrong man. But tonight, I stand here not as a convict but as a mother reclaiming her name." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Joan's face went white. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered. Fiona's gaze met hers, calm, unflinching. "Joan, you taught me something. Friends can kill you, but only if you let them hold your fear. And I don't have any left." Nathan took a step closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Fiona, stop this. You're destroying yourself." She smiled small, razor thin. "I already died once, Nathan. You're the one about to lose everything." And with that, she turned, walking off the stage as chaos erupted behind her, shouting, flashing lights, the storm she had unleashed. Outside, the Seattle rain poured again, cold, relentless, cleansing. Fiona stepped into it, breathing deep. No one followed. No one dared. Behind her, the empire burned in headlines, screens, and every stunned whisper. Lance was waiting by the car. She climbed in, staring at the hotel's reflection glowing like a fire in the rearview mirror. "It's done," she said quietly. Lance nodded. "They're finished. The evidence went to the Federal Bureau when the video played. The law's on your side this time." Fiona leaned her head against the glass, eyes closing as a tear slid down, not bitter, but light. 4 years. I lived to breathe this moment." Lance looked over, his voice gentle. "What now?" She opened her eyes. "I want to see my children." The next morning, the world exploded. The Jones empire collapses. Betrayal exposed. The innocent woman returns. America repeated her name, Fiona Hart, not with contempt, but quiet awe. She didn't read the papers. She only went to one place, a small elementary school in Tacoma. Lance waited by the car as she sat on a bench, clutching a coffee cup, eyes fixed on the school gate. The bell rang. Ruby came out first, blue dress, ponytail bouncing. Pascal followed, red backpack on his shoulders. Fiona held her breath. They were laughing. Untouched by darkness, she didn't move closer. She just watched. Ruby turned, and for a fleeting second, their eyes met. 8 years old, and yet something in that gaze flickered with recognition. The girl hesitated, then smiled. Fiona covered her mouth, tears spilling silently. No words, just that smile, proof that the thread of blood, of love, had never broken. On Lance's porch, the air smelled of rain and wine that night. Helena slipped upstairs. Lance poured her a glass. "You did it." Fiona smiled faintly. "We did it." They sat in silence for a while. Then she spoke. "You know, I don't want revenge anymore. I want to live. And this time, for myself." The Seattle wind rustled the trees. The scent of wet earth, rain, and something new, freedom. Lance smiled. "Then congratulations. Fiona Hart, the woman who had nothing to lose and somehow found everything. She turned to him, eyes soft but certain. No, Lance, I didn't find everything. I just found myself. And sometimes, that's enough. The night settled around them. Somewhere down the quiet street, a child's laughter echoed. A chapter closed, and the narrator's voice, soft as a whisper, lingered like the aftertaste of truth. Not every ending needs a winner. Some battles exist only so one soul can finally escape its past. It was a March morning in Seattle, the kind that hinted winter was finally letting go. Sunlight spilled through the living room window where Fiona was pouring coffee. She wore a soft grey sweater, her short hair a little messy, her hands still trembling slightly when she handled boiling water, a leftover reflex from years behind bars. But there was something new in her, a smile. Not the kind meant for anyone else, but the quiet curve of someone who had finally learned to breathe without pain. On the table lay that morning's newspaper. Nathan and Joan were on the front page, handcuffed and led out of court. The headline read, "The Hart-Jones Case, the Fall of a False Empire." Beneath it, the court confirms Fiona Hart's full exoneration. All assets, reputation, and parental rights restored. Fiona stopped reading there and folded the paper. She didn't need to see the rest. Justice had said enough. Outside, Ruby was spinning in the yard, her hair a halo in the sunlight. Pascal rode his bike along the fence, shouting, "Mom, look at this." And Bella, the child Fiona had brought into the world in chains, sat on the porch humming, arranging pebbles into little patterns no one had taught her. Fiona watched them all, her chest tightening. Some things could never be restored, but some miracles only arrive after you've lost everything. At noon, Lance stopped by, holding a small wooden box. "From Helena," he said, his smile tilted and warm. Inside was a leather bracelet with a small charm engraved with hope. She said, "For Miss Fiona, the lady who made my dad believe in miracles again." Fiona laughed softly. "That little girl has such a beautiful heart. Just like her father," he said before he could stop himself. Their eyes met, and the air went still for a moment. They sat on the porch, drinking coffee, watching the children chase each other across the grass. No words were needed. The silence between them spoke clearly enough. "You were right," Fiona finally said. "Justice doesn't erase the wound. It just lets it start to heal." Lance nodded. "And you're healing, Fiona." She looked at him. "And you?" He smiled faintly. "Maybe I am too." The afternoon light slanted golden. A breeze carried the scent of wet soil. Fiona looked toward the open sky and exhaled slowly. "You know, I dreamt of this day for years. I thought I'd laugh, shout, celebrate. But now that it's here, all I feel is quiet. So quiet it scares me." "It's not fear," Lance said gently. "It's what happens when pain finally leaves. It leaves a space behind. You're learning how to fill it with peace." She smiled, eyes soft. "Peace. I used to think I didn't deserve that word. Now you do." That afternoon, they picked up Helena from school. The little girl ran into Fiona's arms, then turned to Ruby, Pascal, and Bella. "Now we have 4 kids to play with," she squealed. The children burst out laughing and tumbled across the yard together. Lance and Fiona watched them, 2 adults, who had already lived entire lifetimes in silence, and in their eyes glowed a kind of light that had no name. June. Seattle's sky was impossibly blue. Fiona's life was finding its rhythm again, not the old rhythm, but something steadier, truer. Despite the board's repeated offers, she didn't return to the company. Instead, she founded the Phoenix Foundation, a non-profit for women wrongfully convicted. Every morning, she walked into a small downtown office where Lydia, now the foundation's executive director, worked beside her. On the wall hung a framed photo that read, "Fiona Hart, from ashes, she rose." The work was heavy. Each case is a story of despair, but Fiona no longer feared pain. She had learned how to use hers to lift others out of it. Every evening, a silver car waited by the corner. Lance, sometimes with Helena, sometimes alone, would drive her home. They didn't talk much, but when their eyes met through the rearview mirror, words weren't necessary anymore. One summer night, after the children had gone to bed, they sat together on the porch again. The air was warm, scented with lavender. "Have you talked to her yet?" Fiona asked. "Her? Your ex-wife?" Lance sighed. "Yes, she came back. She said she regretted everything and wanted to see Helena. I let her. But when she looked at our daughter, I realized the past can't be mended, not because of hate, but because we're no longer the same people. Was Helena happy? She was. But afterward, she hugged me and said, "Dad, I just hope if Mom comes back, Miss Fiona won't go away." Fiona laughed softly, eyes glistening. "That's one wise little girl. She's right to be afraid," he said quietly. "Because you're the only one who's ever made me believe people can start over without forgetting." Silence again, the tender kind. Crickets chirped in the dark. Fiona looked at him, eyes shining. "I once thought I'd never love again. What I had with Nathan had ruined me for good, made me afraid to trust anyone. And now? Now I don't believe in promises. I believe in actions. And you." She pressed her hand against his chest, over the steady beat of his heart. "You don't talk much, but you've done enough for me to believe." He took her hand in his. No confession, no grand words, just warmth, steady, real. They sat under the soft summer night glow, two souls once shattered, now beating in rhythm again. From somewhere inside, children's laughter echoed in dreams. Helena, Ruby, Pascal, Bella. 4 little lives fate had stitched into one imperfect, honest family. Fiona leaned her head against Lance's shoulder. "You know," she whispered, "everyone thinks my story is about revenge, but it's really just about someone learning how to love again." He smiled, looking out into the quiet. "To love someone else, or to love yourself?" She closed her eyes. "Both, but it always starts with yourself." The wind brushed past, setting the porch light swaying. The world was silent, except for the soft rhythm of 2 hearts finally beating in peace. And if there were a narrator still whispering at the end, it would say, "In the end, Fiona learned that resurrection isn't about victory. It's about the courage to open your heart again after it's been broken." She didn't need the world to bow to her. She just needed the ones she loved to laugh again. And if anyone ever asks what happiness is, perhaps it's the moment you dare to believe in peace. One more time. Autumn returned to Seattle wrapped in gold, the kind of light that makes even the cold feel gentle. Fiona's wooden house sat beneath a canopy of crimson maples outside the city, on a quiet stretch of land she now called home. The porch was blanketed in dry leaves. Inside, the scent of baked apples filled the air, and laughter rose like music from another life, a life after the storm. Pascal was on the floor building a makeshift robot with Lance. Ruby helped Helena with a drawing, and Bella, now 3, sat curled in Fiona's lap, clutching a crayon and scribbling circles on a blank page. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" Fiona asked. "Our house," Bella said proudly. "And who's in the house?" Bella giggled, eyes bright. "Mommy, Pascal, Ruby, Helena, and Uncle Lance." Fiona looked down 5 stick figures under a crooked roof, beneath a smudge of blue sky. A child's picture, simple, imperfect, made her chest tighten. Not from sadness, but from faith. After everything, she understood. The only thing worth fighting for wasn't pride or wealth, but the right to love and be loved in return. But peace never stays untouched. That morning, Lance received a letter, a government seal stamped across the envelope. He read it quietly, his face still, his silence too heavy. Fiona noticed. "Nathan," he said finally. "He wants to see you." That name. She hadn't heard it spoken in 2 years. He was serving a 20-year sentence. Joan, 15. Both vanished from the public eye after their fall. Fiona had never visited. She thought she never would. But the letter was brief, trembling handwriting, 3 short lines. "I don't ask for forgiveness, but there's something you should know. Come if you still want the whole truth." She sat silently for a long time. Lance didn't press her. He only waited. At last, she said quietly, "I'll go, but not for him." The federal prison was 2 hours from Seattle. Cold halls, grey walls, the smell of disinfectant sharp enough to summon old ghosts. Each metal door clanged open like a memory she thought she'd buried. The man behind the glass was no longer the Nathan she once loved. His hair was streaked with grey, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow. When she sat down, he spoke first. "Fiona, you came." She said nothing. He stared at his cuffed hands. "I thought I did everything for the company, for power, but when I lost it all, I realized the only thing I destroyed was the one thing that ever made me happy." Fiona's voice was low. "Happiness wasn't something you lost, Nathan. It was something you sold." He shut his eyes. "I know. But there's something Joan never knew, something you should." He slid a folded paper through the metal slot. A birth certificate. Bella Jones. Mother, Fiona Hart. Father, Nathan Jones. "This isn't what I need to see," Fiona said. "I know," he murmured. "It's what comes with it. Before arrest, I opened to trust all the shares I stole from you. They belong to Bella now. She'll get them when she turns 18. It's not redemption, but—" "You don't get redemption," she interrupted. "You only get to remember." Nathan's voice broke. "Then let me remember." She stood. "Where are you going?" "Back to what's real," she said softly. "You should try that once before you die." She left without looking back. Outside, the wind cut through the prison yard. The sky was grey, but light still broke through. Lance was waiting by the car. "You okay?" he asked. Fiona nodded. "Yes, because for the first time, I don't hate him anymore." Winter came again. The wooden house was veiled in frost. In the living room, a small Christmas tree glittered with handmade ornaments. Pascal hung a paper star. Ruby cut snowflakes. Helena laughed, and Bella dozed beneath a blanket as Fiona told her a story. Once upon a time, there was a phoenix. People said it could only live again after dying in a fire. But the truth was it never really died. It just learned to become something stronger. Bella blinked sleepily. "Was it scared of the fire, Mommy?" Fiona smiled, looking out the window where snow had begun to fall. "Of course. Everyone's scared. But it flew anyway through the fear, toward the light, just like I did." Later, when the children were asleep, Lance stepped onto the porch carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. She wrapped a scarf around her neck and joined him. Their breath rose in white curls against the night. "What did you think after seeing him?" he asked. "I realized forgiveness isn't for people who deserve it. It's for those who deserve peace." "So you forgave him?" "Not completely," she said. "But I stopped giving him space in my heart. That's its own kind of forgiveness." Silence settled between them, soft, gentle. Snow drifted across the porch roof. Lance reached for her hand. "Fiona." She turned to him. "I promised I'd say this when it was all over," he said, voice rough. "I love you, not out of pity, not because of what you've survived. I love you because you are the woman who stood up when everyone thought she'd never rise again." Fiona looked at him for a long time, then touched his cheek. "I used to think love was just the beginning of pain. But if there's anyone who could make me believe again, it's you." They kissed slow, tender, like 2 wanderers finally finding home. That night, the Seattle sky was startlingly clear. The moon shimmered on the lake, where their reflections merged, not haunted by the past, only alive now. And the narrator's voice, calm and low, spoke one last time. "Every scar tells a story not of pain, but of survival. And forever isn't about staying with someone for eternity. It's the moment your heart stops being afraid to love." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows. Fiona stood watching the children play in the snow, their laughter bright as bells. Lance came up behind her, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She smiled softly. "I'm thinking, happiness isn't loud. It's knowing you walked through hell and still have the gentleness to smile." He took her hand, and together they watched the quiet world outside, wind stirring the trees, snow falling slowly, the soft rhythm of 2 hearts that had once been shattered, now whole. And so the story of Fiona Hart ended not in triumph, but in warmth. She was no longer a victim, nor a symbol, just a woman who learned to believe, love, and forgive herself. Thank you, if you've walked beside Fiona through all 10 chapters through hell, justice, and rebirth. Tell me what you've learned from her journey. Maybe just one simple line. You still believe in peace. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Because next week, another story awaits. A story about love, loss, and how we always, somehow, find our way back to the light.